Sometimes, when the night is quiet and the wind touches my skin like a whisper from the past, I still hear her voice. It's faint, like a dream I never fully woke up from, but it's there, clear as the first time, my mother's voice, calling my name. I've lived many years, seen the world shift and stumble forward, but nothing has ever felt as real, as raw, as the day I lost her. And now, with these old bones and a heart worn thin by time, I carry the weight of that memory like a stone that never leaves my hands. I don't tell this story for pity, nor to reopen wounds that never fully closed. I speak because silence has stolen too many truths. I speak because my mother's words deserve to be remembered, not buried beneath dust and forgetfulness. This is not just my story. It is hers, and it is the story of so many others whose voices were taken before they could even speak. If you're still here, listening, I ask you only one thing. Open your heart, not just your ears, but your heart, because what I'm about to tell you is not just about pain. It's about love, a mother's love, and the last words she gave me before the world took her away forever. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I was born in a place that had no name on the map. To the ones who held the whip and wore fine clothes, it was just another patch of land worked by hands like mine. But to me, as a child, it was the whole world, a stretch of soil where my bare feet learned to walk, a corner of earth where the sun burned hard by day and the moonlight whispered softly by night. I remember the smell of damp clay after the rain, the buzz of insects in the heavy air, and the distant cries of animals we never saw. That land did not belong to us, but we belonged to it. It shaped us. It held our sweat, our blood, our dreams quiet. And hidden as they were, my earliest memories live beneath that hot sky. I can still see the small wooden cabin where we stayed, me, my mother, and others who became my family, not by blood, but by shared fate. The roof leaked when it rained, and the floor was just packed dirt. There were no doors to lock, no windows to open, but somehow, that little space felt like shelter when my mother was near. She'd wrap me in old cloths at night, whispering lullabies she learned from her mother, and I would press my ear against her chest to listen to the steady rhythm of her heart. That sound was my first lesson in love and safety. The cabin stood in a row with many others, all lined like tired soldiers in the dark. We called it the quarters, though there was nothing orderly about the way we lived. Life there was dictated by the ringing of bells and the shouts of overseers. At the crack of dawn, everyone moved quietly, quickly. I'd watch my mother tie her headscarf, slip out the door, and disappear into the fields, leaving behind only the warmth of her arms still lingering on my skin. I was too young then to join her in the labor, but old enough to notice the tightness in her smile, the weight in her steps. During the day, I stayed with the other children, watched over by the elders too frail to work. They'd sit under the shade of the one tree near the edge of the quarters, telling stories in low tones, their eyes scanning the path for any sign of trouble. We played in the dust, built little houses from sticks, and pretended the world beyond the fences didn't exist. But it always did. You could feel it in the way the wind carried voices' commands, weeping, sometimes the sharp sound of something we never dared name. Food was simple and rare, cornmeal, scraps of salted meat, a few greens when the season was kind. My mother always saved the best part of her meal for me. Sometimes, she'd bring back a bit of fruit she had hidden in her pocket, a mango or a piece of sugar cane. She'd smile as she handed it to me, her eyes tired, but full of something I couldn't name then. Now I know it was sacrifice, the quiet kind that mothers carry in their bones. At night, when she returned, she never spoke much. Her hands were blistered, her back stiff, but she'd hum as she washed my face and combed my hair with her fingers. She told me once, even if the world forgets who you are, I won't let you forget yourself. Those words didn't make sense to me then. I thought I would always have her, always be her little boy, always fall asleep in her arms. But life in that place was a lesson in impermanence. Friends vanished overnight, taken to other farms or sold away. One day you'd play beside someone in the dirt, and the next, their space would be empty, their name never spoken again. It was like that with everything. Nothing stayed, nothing belonged to us, not our time, not our hands, not even our own names. My mother used to whisper my true name to me at night, the one she gave me before the world gave me another. It was hers alone, like a secret spell to protect me. Even now, I can still see her face in the candlelight, lit by the small flame she lit each evening with shaking hands. Her skin glowed golden in the firelight, her eyes dark pools of sorrow and strength. She'd pull me close and stroke my cheek, telling me stories from her youth, how she once ran through tall grasses, how she sang by rivers, how she held me the moment I was born and cried because she knew what the world would try to take from us. We didn't have clocks, but I measured time in moments like those. The sound of her voice, the scent of her skin, the warmth of her arms, those were the only things I truly owned. And though the days were hard and the nights often colder than they should have been, there was still a sliver of peace in those quiet moments when we could pretend, if only for a heartbeat, that we were free. That place, broken and harsh as it was, holds every piece of who I became. It shaped the rhythm of my walk, the way I carry silence like a second skin. And though I have wandered far from that land, though its soil no longer touches my feet, I feel it in my bones. The quarters, the tree, the way my mother hummed, the warmth of the dirt when I lay on it, staring up at the stars and wondering if they could see me, wondering if freedom was something you could ever feel, even just in your dreams. This was the place I once called home, not because it offered safety or comfort, but because it was where my mother lived, where her voice still echoed against the wooden walls, where her hands held me close and tried, in every way she could, to shield me from the world that waited just beyond the fences. And though that place gave me more sorrow than joy, I carry it still, carved into my memory with the sharp edge of love. It was a morning like many others, but the air felt different, heavier, even before the sun had climbed over the treetops. Something in the wind told me the day would not be kind. I was still a boy, small enough to fit in my mother's lap, but old enough to sense when fear entered a room before any words were spoken. She moved quickly that morning, her hands fumbling with the cloth she wrapped around her head. I saw her glance out the door more times than usual. Her eyes darted toward the path that led to the big house, where decisions were made without our knowing, without our consent. I didn't ask questions. I just stayed close. She pulled me into her arms, holding me tighter than normal, her heartbeat fast beneath my cheek. Whatever happens today, she whispered, you remember who you are. You remember my voice. I nodded, not knowing why her words sounded like a goodbye. The quarters buzzed with quiet tension. Men spoke in hushed voices. Women clutched their children a little tighter. Even the birds seemed to sing less. Then we heard the sound hooves on hard ground. A wagon rolled in, and with it came 3 men we had never seen before, well dressed, loud, and looking over us like livestock. I remember the cold way they pointed, how they whispered to the overseer, and then looked toward me. My mother's grip on my hand grew tight, too tight. She stepped in front of me as if her body could shield mine from whatever was coming. Names were called. A few of the older boys were taken first. I remember one of them crying out for his sister, who chased after him barefoot before falling to the dirt. They dragged him away, and the sound of her scream still echoes in my memory like a bell that never stopped ringing. Then, the man pointed to me, just me. I didn't understand. At first, I looked up at my mother, confused. She knelt down, cupped my face, and for a moment, time stopped, the world faded. It was just her and me, her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. Run, she said. If you ever get the chance, run. The next moments happened, in flashes, arms pulling me, her voice rising, a scuffle, the crack of a whip knot on me. But near us, a threat in the air, she screamed, not from pain, but from something deeper, desperation. I felt myself being lifted, dragged toward the wagon. She lunged, caught my arm for just a second, and then nothing. That was the last time I saw her face, the last time her hands touched mine. Her voice, broken and raw, followed me as I was taken, my baby. Don't forget me. The ride in the wagon was long, but I don't remember most of it. Just the cold of being alone, the silence of boys who, like me, had lost everything in a single breath. I kept her voice in my head over and over, like a song I couldn't stop singing. They brought us to a new place, bigger fields, stricter rules, harsher hands. I was given a new name, a new set of clothes, and a space to sleep that didn't smell like home. Nothing did. I searched every face for hers, every voice for the softness I had lost. Nights were the worst. I cried without sound, afraid that if I wept loud enough, they'd punish me for remembering. One of the older men there saw me one evening, curled up with my arms around my knees. He sat beside me, quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You're not the first. You won't be the last. But if you hold on to who you are, they can't take all of you." I didn't answer, but I held those words, just like I held hers. The days became weeks. The weeks became years. I worked, I bled, I grew. But something in me remained untouched. A corner of my spirit, where her voice still lived, I'd whisper her words to myself before sleeping. Run. If you ever get the chance, run. And you remember who you are. There were moments I thought I'd forget her face. That frightened me more than anything. But then I'd see a woman with kind eyes, or hear a lullaby hummed from someone's mouth, and the image of her would come rushing back like a tide I couldn't stop. One day, I asked one of the other boys if he remembered his mother. He said, no, said it was too long ago, too painful. I didn't blame him, but I swore I'd never let myself forget. I held her memory like fire in my hands. It burned sometimes, yes, but it also lit the way forward. I told myself that one day I would speak her name again, out loud, in freedom. This is how the day everything changed became the day I started becoming who I am. Not just a boy taken, not just a body used, but a soul that refused to be erased. Because even when they stole me from her arms, they couldn't steal her from my heart. They never could. They brought me to a place I had never seen before, but it looked just like the one I had left behind. Rows of fields stretching into the distance. Cabins lined up in silence, and I saw many tired eyes watching from the shadows. I arrived, with nothing but my name, the one my mother whispered to me each night, and the echo of her voice telling me to hold on, to survive. I didn't know how to be without her. I didn't know where to place my hands, how to sleep without her warmth beside me, how to breathe in a world that had pulled me out of hers. But I learned I had to. At first, I spoke very little. I didn't know who I could trust, didn't know what would bring punishment or what would be allowed. Every word felt like a risk. So I watched, I listened, I followed the rhythms of those who had been there longer. They moved like shadows, quiet, efficient, without drawing attention. I tried to copy their steps, to become invisible like they were. The work was hard. My hands were small, but they expected them to do the work of a man. I pulled weeds, carried buckets heavier than I was, and stood under the sun until my skin blistered. I bled often, cried in silence, and kept my eyes low. No one told me I was doing well, but no one struck me either. So I guess I was learning. Hunger became a normal feeling. Some days we ate, some days we didn't. I learned to chew slowly, to make a crust of bread last as long as I could. I learned to keep things hidden, little pieces of cloth, a flat stone that reminded me of home, anything that helped me remember who I was. Nights were the hardest. I missed her voice the most when the sky went dark. I'd lie on the hard floor, curled into myself, and repeat her words like a prayer. You remember who you are. That sentence became my anchor. I held it in my chest, whispered it into my eyes, and clung to it when everything else felt like it would fall away. The older ones took notice of me, not because I was strong or fast, but because I didn't speak much and I worked without complaint. One of them, a man they called Untold, started watching over me. He'd place his hand on my shoulder after the day's work and just nod, no words. But it meant something. It meant I wasn't invisible. One evening, while we were cleaning tools, he said, "You got the eyes of someone who lost too much too soon." I didn't answer, but he didn't expect me to. After that, he taught me things. How to tie a knot with one hand, how to carry weight without hurting my back, how to read a man's face before he spoke. Survival was in the small things, he said. The things no one noticed but kept you alive. The other children were quiet, too. We were all like wounded birds, flinching at every sudden noise. But slowly, some of us started to talk. Not about our families, never that. That was too raw, too dangerous. We talked about the stars, about the sound of rain on the roof, about whether anyone in the world knew we were there. We asked questions we couldn't answer, like what trees looked like on the other side of the fences, or whether freedom had a smell. I held close the memory of her face. I tried to draw it in the dirt once, with a stick. It didn't look like her, but it helped. I drew her again and again until the rains came and washed the lines away. But even when the picture disappeared, she stayed with me. Sometimes I thought I could still feel her hand on my back, guiding me. Untold taught me to sing under my breath, just loud enough that only I could hear it. He said a song in your soul was like fire in winter, it kept you from freezing inside. I chose the lullabies she used to sing. I didn't remember all the words, so I filled in the gaps with my own. I sang about the moon, about the sound of her laugh, about the way she used to lift me into the air just to hear me laugh. The work never got easier, but I grew stronger. My arms changed, my feet hardened. I became less afraid of pain, more afraid of forgetting. That was always my biggest fear, that one day I would wake up and not remember her face, her voice, the sound of her breath when she slept beside me. So I told myself her story each night before sleep. I pictured her as clearly as I could. I spoke her name, the real one, the one the world tried to take. I refused to let her fade. I refused to let her become just another nameless soul lost in the noise of history. People came and went. Some were sold, some disappeared. I learned not to get too close, but I couldn't help noticing kindness when it was offered. A shared piece of bread, a blanket on a cold night, a whispered joke when the overseers weren't looking. These things mattered. They reminded me I wasn't alone, that even in a place built on sorrow, there could still be sparks of light. I learned how to survive without her, but I never lived without her. She was in every breath I took, in every quiet song, in every silent tear. And though the world told me I belonged to someone else, I knew deep down I still belonged to her. I learned quickly that silence was both a shield and a prison in that place. Words were dangerous, they could betray you, bring punishment, or worse, draw attention to pain you were meant to hide. So I spoke less and watched more. Every glance, every whisper carried meaning I had to understand. The other boys and men moved like shadows, their faces carved with stories they never told aloud. I saw how some crumbled under the weight of what they carried, while others built walls around their souls so thick no one could reach them. I tried to do both at once, hide my fear, but keep my heart open enough to remember her voice. The quiet was heavy. It filled the cabins, the fields, the nights when I lay awake staring at the dark ceiling, wondering if I was truly alive or just a shadow of a boy. When I was alone, I sometimes spoke to the stars, begging them to carry my prayers to the mother I'd lost. I told them how much I missed her, how I feared forgetting, but silence was a cage too. It kept pain locked away, yes, but it also swallowed hope. I saw men beaten for a word spoken too loud, for a tear caught at the wrong moment. I saw friends taken away in the dead of night, their names erased from memory. So I learned to be still, to become almost invisible, but inside me, a storm raged. Every heartbeat was a reminder of loss, every breath a struggle to keep going. The weight of silence pressed down on my chest, but I refused to let it break me. In quiet moments, I would whisper her name, tracing it with my lips like a secret prayer. I clung to the memory of her hands, the softness of her voice, the way she looked at me with eyes full of fierce love. Those memories were my rebellion against forgetting. As I grew, the silence became a language of its own. I learned to read the smallest changes in a person's expression, the subtle shift in tone that could mean danger or kindness. It was a world without words, but full of meaning. I found ways to speak without speaking, to share hope and pain in glances and gestures. Sometimes, when no one was watching, I would hum the lullabies she taught me, the ones about freedom and home. Those melodies were threads connecting me to a past they tried to erase. Though the silence was heavy, I learned to carry it without losing myself. It became a part of me, a testament to endurance. And even when the world was cold and cruel, I held her voice inside me, a light in the darkness, a promise that I was more than what they tried to make me. The weight of silence was great, but so was the strength it forged within me. I survived because I had no choice, but also because I remembered who I was and who she was to me. Even in the darkest moments, there was a flicker of hope that refused to be snuffed out. It was small and fragile, like the first light of dawn breaking over the fields after a night of endless shadow. I learned to look for it in the smallest things, the gentle smile of a child, the warmth of a shared fire, the soft hum of a song carried on the wind. That flicker was what kept me alive when everything else seemed determined to destroy me. It whispered to me in my darkest hours, reminding me that freedom was not just a dream, but a possibility, a promise waiting to be fulfilled. I remember one evening, sitting by the edge of a stream, my hands raw from work and my body weary beyond words. The sky was a deep indigo, sprinkled with stars so bright they seemed to sing. I listened to the water as it rushed past, carrying with it the echoes of a world I longed to belong to. In that moment, I felt something stir deep inside me, a quiet voice telling me to hold on, to believe, to fight. That was the first time I allowed myself to imagine a life beyond the fences, beyond the fields, beyond the pain. It was terrifying and beautiful all at once. The days that followed were filled with small acts of rebellion, learning to read the shapes of the clouds, naming the trees I saw, humming the songs my mother sang to me. Each act was a tiny claim to my own humanity, a way of saying to the world, I am still here. I was not just a body to be used. I was a soul burning with a desire to be free. There were moments when the despair was so thick it felt suffocating. Nights when I would lie awake, trembling, wondering if I would ever see my mother again, if I would ever know what it truly meant to be free. But then I would think of her eyes, those fierce, unwavering eyes, and the promise she made with her last breath. I would remember her words, the sound of her voice carrying me through the darkness. And in that memory, I found strength. I began to dream more boldly, to plan quietly, to hope fiercely. I made friends with a few who shared my longing, and together, we spoke in whispers of a future where chains would be broken, where songs of freedom would rise like the morning sun. That hope was dangerous. It had to be hidden from those who wanted to keep us in darkness, but it lived in our hearts, growing stronger with each passing day. It was the spark that would one day ignite a fire too powerful to be extinguished. Even when the world tried to erase our stories, to silence our voices, that flicker remained. It was the light of all those who came before us and those who would come after. It was the heartbeat of a people refusing to be forgotten. And so, I held onto it. I nurtured it with every breath, every prayer, every stolen moment of joy. It became the song I sang beneath my breath, the dream I carried in my soul, the promise that one day, freedom would be more than a flicker. It would be a blazing fire that no one could put out. The years passed, each one carrying its own burdens and lessons, but also moments of unexpected grace. I grew taller, my hands tougher, my spirit more resolute. The memory of my mother remained the compass guiding me through the darkest nights and harshest days. Yet, as time wore on, I realized that surviving was not enough. I needed to find a way to reclaim my story, to reclaim my freedom and more than just my dreams. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting long shadows over the fields, a quiet determination settled over me. I could no longer bear the weight of silence and the ache of waiting. It was time to act, to find a way beyond these fences that bound not just my body but my soul. I began to listen more closely to the whispers among the men and boys' whispers, of escape, of resistance, of a world where we might one day stand as free people. Those whispers carried hope, but also risk. The overseers were always watching, ready to crush any flicker of rebellion. Yet, the very fact that we dared to dream was a rebellion in itself. I found allies in the shadows, men and boys who shared my longing, who understood the fire burning inside me. Together, we planned in silence, careful not to speak too loudly, not to reveal our intentions too soon. Each small act of courage, each secret gathering beneath the cloak of night, was a step towards something greater. But even as we prepared, fear was never far. Fear of betrayal, fear of capture, fear of losing what little we had left. And yet, the memory of my mother's voice was a shield against despair. I whispered her words in the quiet moments. You, remember who you are. Those words became our rallying cry, a reminder that we carried not only our own hopes, but the dreams of all those who came before us. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, we made our move. The world seemed to hold its breath as we slipped through shadows, hearts pounding with a mix of terror and hope. Every step was a prayer, every glance a plea for mercy from the night itself. I won't pretend it was easy. The chase was swift and cruel. The cries of men and the crack of whips echoed behind us. But with every stride, I felt the weight of chains loosening round my soul. Freedom was no longer just a dream, it was within reach. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Freedom begins in the heart, long before it is ever grasped by the hands. It is the courage to imagine a life beyond the bars, The strength to fight even when hope seems fragile. Our story is not just mine. It is the story of every soul who has ever been bound by injustice and dreamed of flight. If you have felt the sting of loss, the fire of hope, or the courage to keep going against all odds, then you carry a part of this story with you. I invite you to walk this journey with me. Subscribe to hear the next chapters where the struggle deepens and the fight for freedom takes new shapes. Share your thoughts and feelings below. Your voice matters, and together we keep these memories alive. And if you know someone who should hear this story, pass it on. Let the flame of remembrance and resistance spread. Our past is heavy, but it lights the path forward. Stay with me. There is more to come. In the quiet moments before dawn, I often found myself reflecting on the many faces I had met along this journey. Each one carried their own story of pain and hope, a unique thread woven into the larger tapestry of struggle. Some were broken, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of cruelty. Yet others burned bright with an unyielding desire for freedom. I thought about the sacrifices made not only by those who ran alongside me that fateful night, but by every soul who dared to dream of a better life. Their courage, though often unseen, was the heartbeat that kept the dream alive. I remembered the whispers exchanged in the darkness, the secret codes passed between us like precious jewels. Each plan, each whispered word, was a fragile step toward reclaiming dignity and self. And though the risks were great, so was the strength we found in one another. It was in those shared moments of quiet rebellion that I learned the true meaning of family bonds forged not by blood, but by shared pain and hope. I also learned that freedom is never freely given. It must be taken, fought for, and fiercely protected. The journey ahead was uncertain, the dangers many, but I no longer walked alone. The flicker of hope we carried together was a beacon in the darkness, a promise that even in the face of despair, the human spirit could not be extinguished. As you listen to this story, know that it is not just history, it is a living testament to resilience. And it continues, as long as there are hearts willing to remember, and voices brave enough to speak. So, if this story touches you, if you feel the fire of hope within your own heart, join me. Subscribe to walk this path. Share your thoughts to keep the memory alive, and pass this story on together. We honor those who came before, and those who will come after. Our journey is far from over. Stay with me. There is more to come. The chains we bore were heavy, not only on our bodies, but deep within our spirits. They were more than iron and leather. They were the invisible weights of shame, fear, and the relentless oppression that sought to define us as less than human. Each link pressed down on my shoulders like the weight of a world that wanted to erase who I was. Yet, even beneath this burden, something inside refused to break. I learned that chains could bind the body, but never the soul. I remembered my mother's eyes filled with fierce love and unwavering strength, and I held onto that vision like a talisman. Every day, I carried the physical pain of labor, the blistered hands, the aching back, but I also carried the memory of freedom in my heart. The burden was more than the weight of iron. It was the fight against forgetting, against surrendering to a fate that was not meant for me. I saw others broken by this weight, their spirits dimmed, their voices silenced, but I refused to follow that path. Instead, I saw small freedoms in the cracks, the moments when an overseer looked away, when the sun kissed my skin, when a kind word passed between friends. These fragments became my refuge, the invisible chains I broke every day. With quiet acts of resistance, I learned that true freedom begins within, a place no chain can reach. Even as the world around me sought to define me by my bondage, I defined myself by my memories, my hopes, and my dreams. It was not an easy path. Fear was a constant companion, lurking in shadows, whispering threats, but courage grew stronger. With each breath I took, fueled by the stories my mother left behind and the unyielding belief that someday, somehow, I would be free. The burden of chains was heavy, but it also forged the strength in me, a strength that would carry me through the darkest nights and into the light of a new dawn. And so, I carried on, step by step, heart full of hope, eyes fixed on the horizon, knowing that the chains could never hold what was free inside. Days blurred into each other, a never-ending cycle of toil and pain. The sun rose and fell with merciless regularity, and the fields demanded more than my weary body could give. Yet, it was not just the labor that weighed on me, it was the constant reminder that I was property, a thing to be used and discarded. The overseer's whip cracked like thunder, a cruel punctuation to each day's suffering. Sometimes I saw men collapse under its blow, their cries swallowed by the indifferent earth. I learned to hold my breath and keep moving, to carry the pain quietly, lest it invite more punishment. But beneath the surface, a fire burned. It was the fire of memory and resistance, of a spirit unwilling to be extinguished. I found strength in the stories passed down by the elder, stories of ancestors who had crossed oceans, who had survived worse than this, who had dreamed of freedom long before I was born. These tales were my shield against despair. They reminded me that I was part of something greater, a legacy that no chains could sever. At night, when the world was quiet except for the soft breathing of those around me, I would whisper to myself the names of those who had come before. I would speak their stories into the darkness, keeping their memories alive with every breath. This was my rebellion, my way of claiming a place in a world that sought to erase me. The burden of chains was not only physical but spiritual. It weighed on my heart, threatening to crush the flicker of hope that remained. But I refused to let it die. I nurtured that hope like a precious ember, protecting it from the storms of cruelty and despair. And in that hope, I found the strength to endure. I learned that chains could hold me down for a time, but they could never imprison the soul's longing for freedom. Every day I carried that longing, a quiet but unbreakable flame that lit my way through the darkest nights. The burden was great, but so was my resolve. I would not be forgotten. I would not be broken. And I would carry this story forward, not just for myself, but for all who had suffered and all who would come after. Freedom was not a distant dream, it was a promise I intended to keep. The memory of that day never left me. It lingered like a shadow, long after the sun had set and the fields had grown quiet. The faces of those taken haunted my dreams, boys, and men torn from the little we had, swallowed by a world that seemed determined to forget us. But even in the darkest moments, I found strength in the stories my mother had given me, in the words she whispered before I was taken. "Remember who you are," she said. Those words became a lifeline, a thread that connected me to a past I refused to lose. As the years passed, I learned to carry that memory with me like a torch in the night. It lit the way forward, through the long days of labor and the cold nights alone. I found others who shared my pain, and together we whispered stories of hope. In the dark, forging bonds that no chain could break. There were times I thought I would forget her face, that the weight of this place would erase everything she was to me. But every time that fear crept in, I would close my eyes and see her smile, hear her voice, feel her arms holding me tight. It was enough to keep me going. I learned that memory is a kind of freedom, one that no one can take away. It is the spark that keeps the soul alive when everything else tries to snuff it out. And so, I vowed to hold on to her, to my story, and to the hope that one day I would be free. Freedom was more than just a place. It was a state of mind, a promise whispered. In the quiet moments between fear and despair. It was the courage to dream when dreaming seemed impossible, the strength to fight when the world told me to give up. And though the road ahead was long and uncertain, I knew I was not alone. My mother's last words had become a beacon, guiding me through the darkness, reminding me that I was more than what they tried to make me. If you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of our stories in the wind, in the rustling leaves, in the quiet moments that speak louder than words. These stories matter. They are the threads that connect us, the voices that refuse to be silenced. I ask you now to be part of this journey. Subscribe to hear more, to walk alongside me as the story unfolds. Share your thoughts below. Your voice gives life to these memories. And if you know someone who should hear this story, pass it on. Together, we honor the past and build a future where freedom is more than a dream. The journey was never easy. Each day brought new challenges, new wounds both seen and unseen. I remember the aching in my back after long hours bent over fields, the blisters on my hands from holding tools too heavy for a boy, the sting of lashes from overseers when mistakes were made, or when courage sparked brightly. But the hardest wounds were the ones no one could see, the loneliness that crept in during the cold nights, the silent tears shed when no one was watching, the quiet despair that whispered that perhaps freedom was just a cruel illusion. Yet, even in those moments, I found strength in the bonds formed with others who shared my pain. We became a family of sorts, linked not by blood, but by shared suffering and hope. Together, we whispered dreams beneath the moonlight, shared stolen moments of laughter, and held on to the belief that our chains would one day be broken. I learned to read the signs, the subtle shifts in the wind that hinted at danger, the hidden paths that led to secret places, the coded language passed between those brave enough to plan escape. These small acts of resistance became my lifeline, proof that even in bondage, the spirit can find ways to fight back. My mother's words were a constant echo in my heart, reminding me that identity could not be stripped away, that my soul was mine and mine alone. I carried her love like a shield against the cruelty that surrounded me, a beacon in the darkness that guided me through despair. And as the years wore on, that love transformed into a fierce determination not just to survive, but to live fully, to reclaim the freedom that was my birthright. The road was uncertain, the dangers many, but I held fast to the hope that one day I would walk in the light of freedom, unbound and unafraid. And so I ask you to join me, to carry these stories forward, to keep the memory alive. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and pass this story on together. We honor those who came before and those who will come after. Our journey continues. There is still more to tell. The journey I have shared with you is not just mine, it belongs to all of us, who carry the weight of history in our bones. Each memory, each whispered story, is a thread in the tapestry of a people whose voices were too often silenced. I have walked through darkness and despair, yet also found light and hope in the unlikeliest of places. My mother's last words, "Remember who you are," have been my guide, my shield, and my promise. They remind me that no matter how heavy the chains, no matter how deep the wounds, the spirit can endure. I have seen the faces of those who suffer beside me, the broken, the brave, the forgotten, and I tell their stories now so they will never be lost to time. Our memories are a form of resistance, a way to honor the past and shape a better future. Each story holds a lesson, a truth carved into the fabric of our existence by those who came before. I remember the nights spent under endless skies, listening to the whispers of my ancestors carried on the wind. Their voices spoke of struggle, of pain, but also of resilience and hope. Those stories gave me strength when my body was weak and my heart heavy. As I bring this chapter to a close, I ask you from the depths of my heart, if this story has moved you, if it has awakened something in your soul, please give it your support. Like this video to show that you stand with those who remember. Comment below to share your thoughts and keep the conversation alive. Your voice matters. It helps preserve these stories and ensures they are never forgotten. And if you want to, continue walking this path. If you want to hear more stories that carry the weight and hope of generations, please watch the other videos on our channel. The link to the playlist is pinned in the comments and also available in the description below. Each story is a piece of our shared history, a flame kept burning by those who refuse to let the past be erased. Join us, stay with us, and help keep the memory alive, because as long as we remember, there is hope, and as long as there is hope, freedom is never truly lost. The journey is long, and the road is often difficult, but together we walk it with courage and compassion. Every like, every comment, every share is a step forward in honoring those who came before us and those who will come after. It is a promise that their stories will live on, that the pain will not be in vain, and that the fight for freedom and dignity continues. So I invite you now, from the depths of my soul, to be part of this living memory. Stand with us in the preservation of history. Speak out, listen, and remember, because these stories are not just echoes of the past, they are the foundation for a future where justice, respect, and freedom prevail. Thank you for walking this path with me. Thank you for keeping the flame alive. And thank you for believing that through remembrance, we all find our way to freedom.